We have got a fan and border to border on iHeartRadio today, also AMFM247.com. We have got a fantastic guest, as always, with us today. Mark Mix joins us here on our broadcast. Mark, welcome back to the program. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing fine, James, and it's good to be on with you again. It seems like we can make a news issue every day when it comes to unions and this president.
Well, Mark, let's talk about I think she's going to be the eventual president, but Kamala Harris makes an unsubstantiated claim that anti-union trend costs workers $200 billion. She says American workers are losing $200 billion a year, citing unspecified research. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, well, James, that's a great thing. I mean, first of all, when it comes to the Biden administration, that's just chump change. I mean, they're in the multi-trillions of dollars. So,
Yep.
You know, if you're going to talk, I mean, let's go ahead and get it right. But no, what she's talking about is this so-called union premium, and it comes from some really kind of questionable research from the Economic Policy Institute, which is an AFL-CIO funded front group here in Washington, D.C. that puts out economic data that is obviously very, very favorable to union and forced unionism. And what she's talking about is that if you compare a plumber in New York City who happens to be unionized that makes $95 an hour and a plumber in Provo, Utah who makes $65 an hour and is not unionized, then there's a $30 premium there. And when you add all that up, you get to this $200 billion number. But, you know, they never adjust for cost of living, James, and that's really critical when you're comparing economic data. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges.
Yes. Mark Mix with us today. He joins us live here on our broadcast. And one of the things that I've never understood this with, and especially right now with some of the different things going on. Their unions, as we've talked about before, they used to do really good things, and then for whatever reason they changed and became this odd thing now. How do we fix some of the issues that we have with the unions, but also how do we fix some of these problems with some of these other companies like Amazon and some of these others? Because I'm just afraid that if Amazon and these folks become unionized, they're not going to be unionized like they used to be unions. They'll be unionized like they are now.
Well, that's a question. And if you want to ask the AFL-CIO that question, they would say send all of your work to Mexico, because what they're doing in Mexico, literally, James, the AFL-CIO has filed a complaint with the United States Trade Representative under the USMCA bill, the new so-called NAFTA 2.0, saying that unions, they want workers to be able to free to choose whether or not they want to pay union dues, and they want the company to stop collecting union dues and forwarding it to the union. Now, that sounds like really good policy if you had it here in the United States. But in the United States today, under current law, if the workers stop paying dues, they get fired. If the employer doesn't forward the money to the union in the United States, it's an unfair labor practice charge. But in Mexico, the AFL-CIO wants workers to have free association, and they say this, quote, workers must be able to withhold their union dues, and the company must stop funding them to the existing union, because the unions down there apparently are corrupt and they're a protection racket. Well, if you look at the United Auto Workers here in the United States, where 11 of their top executives are either in jail or on their way to jail for actually being a protection union for Fiat Chrysler, withholding benefits from workers because they were getting payola from a company, one would think that the same should be held here in the United States. But the AFL-CIO doesn't feel that way, because our government's given them tremendous power to have workers fired if they don't pay union dues or fees. That's what the problem with unions is that they're relying on compulsion instead of voluntarism.
We've got Mark Mix with us today. He joins us live here on our big program. Mark became the president of the committee and foundation in 2003 under the leadership of Mr. Mix. The National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation has continued to provide unparalleled free legal assistance to workers and has utilized cutting-edge legal strategies to protect workers from the abuses of compulsory unionism. And that's the thing I think is the biggest problem, Mark, is that it used to be, all these advantages if you joined a union. And now if you join a union, They're donating to political causes. They're selling out workers, especially U.S. workers, to other countries. And it's just become something that it never was established to be.
Yeah, James, you're right on point there. And frankly, if you're a rank and file union member right now, you should be scared for your job and you should be scared for your employment, because if the president continues to do what the so-called environmentalists want him to do, and that is cancel the Keystone Pipeline and other pipelines, take away exploration rights in federal properties, both in the continental United States and then up in Alaska, it's going to put a whole bunch of union workers out of work and on the unemployment line. He's already done that with the Keystone Pipeline. So one wonders, and to your point, and it's well taken, I mean, one of the conditions of union membership is supporting the ideas financially, maybe not ideologically, but financially, the interests of the union officials here in Washington, D.C., that spend literally hundreds of millions, up to billions of dollars to support candidates that most rank-and-file workers probably don't support. And that's a violation of individual rights and individual freedom, and it can't last much longer, that's for sure.
We've got Mark Mix with us today. He joins us live here on our big program. And Mark, that there is a lot going on with unions. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are all in when it comes to unions. Where do you think things are headed? And because I know there's a lot of folks that are trying to get rid of these right-to-work laws and some of these different things across the country.
Yeah, absolutely, James. And the president and the vice president have made it clear that they think the only way they can save the American economy is by forcing workers into unions and making them pay dues. And one of the ways they're going to do that is by repealing all 27 right-to-work laws that are in place today across the country. And there's two ways they're working on that right now. There's the so-called PRO Act, which is a bill that's already passed the House of Representatives. It's over in the Senate waiting for what should be about 3 more co-sponsors, and then Chuck Schumer said he will bring it to a vote on the floor of the Senate. And then with the so-called infrastructure bill, the American Jobs Act that the president has touted, it's a $2.3 trillion, $2.4 trillion federal stimulus, quote unquote, I'm using my finger quotes here, for infrastructure, and when only about 5% of it has anything to do with roads and bridges and those things that you and I, James, would recognize as infrastructure. But part of the instructions of the president as he sends that idea to Congress to put legislative legs to it is that the PRO Act, this bill that would repeal all right-to-work laws, must be part of that package too. So not only are they working on it from a straight legislative standpoint, they're working on it from a budget standpoint. And frankly, Kamala Harris has been charged with her, I think it's her second or third major responsibility. She's running the multi-cabinet level task force designed to promote unionism in America. They had their first meeting a week or two ago, and we're expecting a report 180 days from that first meeting, James, to find out what they have to do to force more workers to pay union dues to keep their jobs.
Mark Mix with us today. He joins us live here in our broadcast. So with the right to work laws under attack all over the country, what can people do to support your group and raise awareness and all this?
Well, James, they can find us on the amazing internet at www.nrtwc, NRTWC for our committee. That's where our legislative work is done, .org, nrtwc.org. And if they want to find out about our legal work, they can find that at nrtw.org, nationalrighttowork.org, nrtw.org. You can find out have all your questions answered. You can talk to an attorney for free about your rights. But basically what they have to do, James, and you provide this great service, is you keep people informed about what's happening. And, the only way this grand experiment in self-governance survives is if we know what Congress is trying to do to us, or our state legislature, or our county commission, or our village board. We have to be involved, have to be engaged, and the only way the other side can win, the only way force can win, the only way compulsion can win is if we're not paying attention. And so we have to continue to watch what they do, particularly on these types of issues when it comes to labor policy. These are very, very important, and I know a lot of people have other issues that are their hot-button issues, but all of it makes a difference. And what this president's trying to do is radically change the American experiment in self-government by changing our economic makeup. That's for sure.
Well, one more little piece of business I want to get your thoughts on. We talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the interview, but I really want to get your thoughts on this. This unionization of Amazon. Amazon, they basically they're letting people unionize, but not exactly, because Amazon workers have voted no, but the union officials are only willing to let them become unions if they agree with certain decisions. Explain this to me.
Yeah, well, look, the vote in Alabama was a vote that had international importance, national importance. It was so important that Joe Biden had to make a video about why the workers there ought to vote for unionization and why they need a union there. But James, at the end of the day, at that Amazon facility in Bessemer, Alabama, only 12% of the workforce that was eligible to vote for the union voted for the union, and this was a workforce that was 85% black, and that's the demographic that union officials want to convince us that are being so abused that the only way they can survive is to have a union. Well, those workers spoke out very clearly. I think of the people that actually voted, about 27% voted for unionization. And, it all came on the context of all of these bad things that Amazon was doing. And I'm not going to stand up for Amazon. I mean, Jeff Bezos is doing as much or any more to destroy the country through his other media outlets and other things that he's doing. But in the case of the Amazon workers, they were given the chance to vote. They made their decision, and the decision wasn't what union officials wanted. It wasn't what the Democrats in Washington, D.C. wanted. But now they filed unfair labor practice charges against Amazon as somehow getting involved and engaging in this election that caused these workers to vote against them. But look, if workers want to unionize, they can under the law. They're protected. If an employer mistreats them, they will vote for unions. If an employer is taking care of them and looking out for them, they will probably be more interested in being directly accountable to the employer than they would be to a third-party labor union that would step in between them and their employer.
We have got Mark Mix with us today. Mark, I appreciate you making time for us today. Thanks for coming on the broadcast, and we will talk to you soon. Have yourself a wonderful week, my friend.
You too, James. Always good to be on with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Appreciate it. There he goes. Mark Mix with us today here on our big program. And you can join us each and every day over there at JiggyJaguar.com. That's JiggyJaguar.com. And we are going to take a brief time out.